Hello there, and welcome back to yet another Night of the Movies podcast. And in these podcasts, I talk all things movies and TV, and whatever I want, whenever I want. And in today's podcast, I'm reviewing Ahsoka. But just before I do that, I should say what I say at the start of every podcast I do, which is, if you are watching this podcast on YouTube, hello there to my viewers, but you prefer to listen to your podcasts, well, guess what? You can with this one too, at Night of the Movies on Spotify, and if you are already listening to this podcast on Spotify, hello there to podcast listeners, then you can also check this podcast out visually on my YouTube channel at Night of the Movies on that platform as well. Likewise, wherever you may be watching or listening to the podcast, don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy the podcast, of course, and leave me some feedback on things to improve on in future podcasts, because there's always things to improve on, and feedback is, as ever, much appreciated. So, let's get into it. Ahsoka. So, this is the newest Star Wars Disney Plus show. I don't think I said that correctly. Yeah, this is the newest Star Wars Disney Plus. So, this is the newest Star Wars Disney Plus show, got it? This is the newest Star Wars Disney Plus show, which follows the character of Ahsoka, if you haven't guessed already. And I think, because I don't think anyone at Lucasfilm has said this, so I'm presuming that this show is meant to take place after Ahsoka's appearances in Mandalorian Season 2 and in the Book of Boba Fett. And in this series, we see her training Sabine, we see Sabine trying to find Ezra, we see Hera trying to solidify her place in the rebellion, yet trying to stick with her friend at the same time, and we also meet these two new characters, Baylan and Shin, who are neither Jedi or Sith, although they're leaning more to the dark side, and we see that Thrawn is back, and he seems to be setting up a new empire. And that's the gist of this show. And I should say here, I am not familiar with any of these characters. At least I wasn't familiar with any of these characters before I started this show, because I never watched Star Wars Rebels. I never saw that show. And Dave Filoni, who is a showrunner who has written, I think, all the episodes of Ahsoka, he said that this series, that the Ahsoka series, is a direct continuation from Star Wars Rebels. But as I've already said, I never watched that show because Star Wars animation just isn't for me. If it's for you, that's great. I really wish I liked it. But I just find it too unengaging and I can't get into it. I find it tough to watch. The animation to me looks cheap and I find it really off-putting. It looks like the sort of animation you get before you go on a theme park ride, telling you to make sure that the ride is safe and that you got your seatbelts and whatever before you're about to go on this ride. That's what it looks like to me. And I tried watching a bit of the Clone Wars series when everyone was raving about when the last season of that came out, and I just couldn't get into it. I watched about half of the first season and I really struggled. I think I even fell asleep in one of the episodes, and they're not long episodes. And so I've never seen Clone Wars. I've seen the Clone Wars movie though. I've never rewatched it. I never felt the need to rewatch it at all. Did not really, was not a memorable experience for me. But yeah, I've never seen the Clone Wars series, I've never seen Bad Batch, and I've never seen Star Wars Rebels. So this series faced an uphill battle for me, because I still wanted to see it, because if you haven't guessed already, I'm a Star Wars fan. I was at Star Wars Celebration earlier this year, and I had a great time there, by the way. Absolutely loved it there. And I remember when the trailer played for Ahsoka at Star Wars Celebration, the crowd reaction to that trailer was immense. It was probably the biggest reaction to any of the trailers at Star Wars Celebration this year, and that's saying something because they also showed the trailer for the Acolyte Skeleton Crew, which, by the way, those trailers haven't actually been officially released yet, and those trailers are great. And also they showed the trailer to Andor Season 2, which looks phenomenal. But the trailer to this got the biggest response, and that got me excited. So even so I don't know the characters, or even so I didn't know these characters before I watched this show, I still wanted to see what it was. I still wanted to see what it was going to be like, because even though the trailers didn't appeal to me too much, it's still Star Wars. And I love Star Wars. Empire Strikes Back is on some days my favourite film of all time. Other days it's Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, and as of today it's still Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. But Empire Strikes Back is my second favourite film of all time, though. I love that film to pieces, and Return of the Jedi is a comfort film for me. And, you get the point. I'm a huge Star Wars fan, and that's why I wanted to check out this show. And the trailers, they didn't look too appealing to me. But at the same time, I was ready to be surprised by this show. I was ready to be surprised by it. I wasn't looking forward to it too much. I wasn't looking forward to it the same way I was looking forward to Obi-Wan, because I already knew Ewan McGregor's Obi-Wan because I'd seen the Star Wars prequels, and I wasn't looking forward to it as much as I was looking forward to the Book of Boba Fett because I already knew the Boba Fett character, and I wasn't looking forward to it as much as I was looking forward to Mandalorian because Mandalorian, when I saw the trailers for that, it looked familiar. Yet when I saw the trailers for Ahsoka, it looked like an era of the Star Wars timeline, of the Star Wars galaxy that I didn't really know. But still, I was looking forward to, I was intrigued to watch this show, though. I wanted to check it out. Never seen Star Wars Rebels, and I wanted to check out this show to see what it was like, to see what's going to be for me. And honestly, surprise, surprise, because I've liked all the live-action Star Wars Disney Plus shows so far, I enjoyed this show. Is it great? No, it's not. And is it on the level of Andor? No, it isn't, but that's fine in my opinion. And not every Star Wars show has to be on the same level as Andor. We have Andor. Andor is brilliant. I also like when Star Wars is just fun, though, because as good as Andor is, and it's insanely good, it's also very serious. And I like the Mandalorian style of Star Wars, and this is what that show reminded me of, because even though I did enjoy Mandalorian Season 3, it wasn't great, and it wasn't as good as it could have been. And this show reminded me that Star Wars can be really fun and just take your mind off the day you are having. Whenever I would wake up to watch Ahsoka in the morning on a Wednesday morning, I would just smile from ear to ear. I mean, with the exception of the first 2 episodes, I didn't really like them too much. They took a bit too much time to set the scene. They were a bit slow, and things happen in those first 2 episodes. And spoiler here in case you haven't seen the first 2 episodes of Ahsoka yet, Sabine gets stabbed at the end of the first episode, and I was like, oh, she's dead? And then she wasn't dead. And every time someone gets stabbed in the Star Wars galaxy, I go, what about Qui-Gon? He got stabbed in The Phantom Menace, and he died. Why aren't these characters dying when they get stabbed? That being said, from episode 3 onwards, I really enjoyed this show. I found it really entertaining. Does it have problems? Absolutely. But that actually kind of made me like it more. Here's what I mean. This show reminded me of the Star Wars prequels. It reminded me of the feeling I had watching the Star Wars prequels, and the feeling I still have watching parts of those films now. I've always liked the Star Wars prequels. Now, I can sit back and put my film critic cap on for a second and say, yeah, they're clearly bad films. I know they don't really work. Although saying that, I actually think Revenge of the Sith is not a bad film. If I'm just looking at it from a film standpoint, if you're just looking at a piece of cinema, I actually think it works quite well. But that aside, they're not good films, really. The Phantom Menace doesn't really work. It's a pretty film, it's nice to look at, but it's all over the place, and it's just, it doesn't really work at all. Attack of the Clones is the worst Star Wars movie. I think it is definitively the worst Star Wars movie. Revenge of the Sith has this whole storyline with General Grievous, and he's completely wasted. I understand he might be in the Clone Wars TV show, but I've never seen the Clone Wars TV show, so I don't care. And then you get to Revenge of the Sith, and this new villain, General Grievous, introduced, and why the hell is he here? Such a wasted character. God, 4 lightsabers, and he's well cool. He looks awesome, and then you get to him, and really? It just feels wasted. But saying all that, I enjoy those films because those films were my introduction to Star Wars. I remember watching The Phantom Menace for the first time and going, wow, I've never seen anything like that. And I was young when I watched that, 4 or 5 years old. And then I remember watching Attack of the Clones for the first time, and immediately after seeing that film, running outside with my toy lightsaber and pretending I was part of that Jedi battle that happens at the end of that film in my garden. And then remember watching Revenge of the Sith for the first time and being quite shook up by that and wanting to see where the story went next. And then watching, the original Star Wars trilogy. And I think because I watched the prequels first, it made me like that original Star Wars trilogy so much more. And, as already mentioned, Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi is my favourite films of all time. So you get the point. I don't think the Star Wars prequels are great, but I've always liked them. And this show had a lot of that feeling of the Star Wars prequels for me. You get Coruscant again. You get to see Coruscant in this light that, pardon me, from what I remember, you haven't really seen since the Star Wars prequels. Sure, you had Coruscant in the Andor TV show, but it wasn't really... It was always dark and dreary when you went to Coruscant then. And the same in Mandalorian Season 3. And then when you go to Coruscant in this show, it's like, oh, this is Coruscant from the Star Wars prequels, the same place as the Jedi Templars, and the same place as Senate is. And it just made me smile at that. And you have lots of characters who are Jedis, and you get that a lot in the Star Wars prequels. And you even have, and spoil it here in case you haven't seen Ahsoka yet and you're planning to watch it, but you haven't got round to it, you have Hayden Christensen back as Anakin. He even looks like he does in Revenge of the Sith when he shows up with that long hair in this show. I got a bit teary-eyed because I was like, that's Anakin from Revenge of the Sith. He's back, because even so, yeah, he was back in Obi-Wan, he didn't look like he did in the Star Wars prequels, at least for the most part. And it shows up in the show, I'm like, it's Anakin! I don't know why, but it made me smile so much, because I never loved the Anakin character in the Star Wars prequels, but when he showed up, God, it evoked the Star Wars prequels for me, and in the best way. I got emotional, because it reminded me that, although those films aren't great, they were my introduction to Star Wars, and it's got so many parts, there's so many parts of the series that remind me of Star Wars prequels, the prequels, don't know what I'm saying there, they remind me of the Star Wars prequels, even to the point they have those wipe edits. In a scene, when you're going from one scene to another scene, you have those wipe edits, which you've always got in all the Star Wars movies. And yes, you get them in the original trilogy as well, but for me, as already mentioned, this reminds me of the Star Wars prequels, because you have the Jedi in there, you have Coruscant, you have... There's just something about the way this show was made, which reminded me of the Star Wars prequels. And that's why I liked it. So even though the show has problems, it reminded me of the problems with the Star Wars prequels, and that made me smile. I don't know if I'm totally making sense there, but yeah, this show reminded me of the Star Wars prequels, and it felt adjacent to the Star Wars prequels. It felt like an extension of those movies, which is why I enjoy it, and you can really tell how much Dave Filoni loves those films. You really can tell how much Dave Filoni loves The Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, and Revenge of the Sith. And I really admired just the way he paid homage to those films in this show, at least the way I saw that he did. And I had a really fun time watching this series. Now, as I've already mentioned, the series has plenty of problems. Similarly to the Star Wars prequels, you have some shoddy directing in this series. You had great actors, you've got great actors in the series who are not conveying the best emotions in scenes which I'm guessing are meant to be emotional. Like, got Rosario Dawson as Ahsoka in the series. Rosario Dawson is a great actress, and there's meant to be these emotional moments in the series, and I don't know if she's acting the best that she could be, and I think quite a bit of that is... I don't know if it's definite, but I think some of that is down to directing. You have lines of dialogue which really aren't as good as they should be. You have characters pausing when they're speaking in sentences for dramatic effect, I'm assuming, but it doesn't really work. And you have all these problems, or many of the same problems, that the Star Wars prequels have. But I didn't care. I was just able to get past all the nitpicks and the problems in the show because I was enjoying it. It felt like Star Wars to me. It just felt like Star Wars. And this is all coming from somebody who never saw Star Wars Rebels. I didn't know these characters. Nor did I really like these characters that I did know before watching the show. Whenever Ahsoka popped up in Mandalorian Season 2 or Book of Boba Fett, I never really liked her appearance too much. I did actually like her appearance in Boba Fett. That's all, I did tell a lie there. I did actually like her appearance in Boba Fett, but I didn't like her too much in Mandalorian Season 2. People went crazy when she showed up, and I was like, it's alright, I enjoyed the episode, but I didn't really care for her showing up. I like the Ahsoka character now. I like the Ahsoka character now. I like what they did with her in the series, and I like the way Rosario Dawson plays her. I wish she showed more of an emotional range, and I wish at times she wasn't so stoic. Saying that, I'm looking forward to seeing that character again, which is something I never expect to say about the Ahsoka character. I didn't like that character in the Clone Wars movie when I watched that all the way back in 2008. And so I wasn't expecting to like her, and yet I do now. I even like the character Sabine, which a lot of people are not liking. I enjoy that character, and I enjoy the character of Hera, played by Mary Elizabeth Winstead. And little trivia here, little Star Wars trivia. Mary Elizabeth Winstead, who plays Hera in this series, is married to Ewan McGregor in real life, who, if you don't know, plays Obi-Wan. And so there's there's a romantic connection behind the scenes in the current Star Wars family, if you will. And David Tennant as the droid in this series, what's he called? Huyang? I think that is what, Huyang. That's what the droid is called. Delightful. A complete and utter delight. I love the fact that we now have David Tennant in the Star Wars universe, because now David Tennant has been in two of the biggest sci-fi franchises of all time, Doctor Who and now Star Wars. He is ruling the world, and David Tennant is one of my all-time favourite actors, so whenever he pops up in anything, I immediately like it a little bit more because it's him. And although you don't actually see his face in this show, it's definitely him voicing the droid. Yeah, you can just tell. And although the droid speaks in one tone, there's something about him which is so lovable. I don't know what it is, but whenever I watch that droid, whenever he's on screen, I was, again, smiling from ear to ear. And I think that all the performances were good from Rosario Dawson, Mary Elizabeth Winstead, and also Natasha Liu Bordizzo. I might be mispronouncing her name. I think I definitely am mispronouncing her name, who played Sabine. I think they all do a great job. But those are the main players, and I think they all do a great job. But I also really enjoyed the side characters in this series, particularly Baylan and Shin. Baylan, played by the late, great Ray Stevenson, is so good in this show. That character, just the way Ray Stevenson plays him, is so good. That is now my favourite character of this series. I ended up enjoying all the other characters, for sure. This is my favourite character, and it's so unfortunate that I'm never going to see Ray Stevenson play that character again, because unfortunately he's passed away. But the fact that we got to see him play this character and just bring so much to the character in that performance, yeah, they gotta get another amazing actor to come in and play that role now, because that actor, whoever is going to play Bale in the future, has got a lot to live up to, because Ray Stevenson, the late great Ray Stevenson, is so good in this series. And I also really like the character of Shin, who is his Padawan. I think that character grew on me as the series went on. And then you have Thrawn, played by Lars Mikkelsen. And little trivia here again, Lars Mikkelsen is the brother of Mads Mikkelsen. And Mads Mikkelsen was in Rogue One: A Star Wars Story, played Jyn Erso's father, the creator of the Death Star. And he was also, most recently, in the new Indiana Jones film, which he played the villain, Voller. And I think he did a great job in that film. And his brother plays Thrawn. So Mads Mikkelsen's brother plays Thrawn, and Lars Mikkelsen plays Thrawn, and he does it really well. I love how subtle Thrawn is, and this show was my first introduction to Thrawn. I didn't know about that character before watching this series, and I really like that villain. Just the way Lars Mikkelsen plays him, just the way he speaks. Yeah, he's really good. I would like to see more of him, though. I'm not going to say he's one of the best Star Wars villains, yeah? No, I'm not saying he's on the same level with Darth Vader. I actually really love Kylo Ren, so I'm not going to say he's on the same level as him. Saying that, though, he might be in a couple of years' time when I get to see more of this character. I liked what I've seen him so far. I just want to see him do something really evil. I haven't felt like I have yet. I also really like the character of Ezra. Ezra Bridges, I think that's what his name is. Never seen that character before. Again, that's what he mentioned. Never watched Rebels. I mentioned that quite a few times in the podcast. Never seen Rebels, and I really like the character of Ezra. And I love how he shows up and he looks like Jesus. And immediately I was like, oh, I know what character you're meant to be. I know what you're meant to be for these characters that have come to save you. I know what you're meant to signify. I love the way he looks, and something I never really mentioned when I do any of these Star Wars reviews of the TV shows, of the Star Wars TV shows, is the costume design. I really admire the costume design in the show, and the production quality is great. Now I'm just going to pause a sec so I can turn my light on, because I just realised my light wasn't on when I was doing this podcast. There you have it, my light is now on, so I just wanted to put it on because it was annoying me that it wasn't. But anyway, going back on what I was saying, I really like the production quality of the show. A lot of this show was filmed with the volume, filmed with this virtual reality set. They used it for The Mandalorian seasons 1 to 3, they used it for the Book of Boba Fett, and they used it for Obi-Wan. They've also used it for films like The Batman, Thor and Thunder, and so on and so on and so on. It's been used quite a bit recently, and I know some people have had problems with the use of volume, this virtual reality set in Star Wars TV shows. I haven't really, although I have noticed it time to time. Like, I noticed it a bit in Obi-Wan, and I noticed it a bit in Mandalorian Season 3 and Book of Boba Fett. But in this show, I didn't notice it so much. I actually think this show has the best use of the volume out of all the Star Wars TV shows we've had so far. I still would prefer at times if they used real sets or actually went to real locations. I'm not sure if they did. They might have for certain scenes, but it just didn't feel like it. And I still would prefer if they did, but I actually like the use of the volume in this series. I think this is the best use of the volume of all the Star Wars Disney Plus shows thus far. And I should say here, I know this series has some inconsistencies with the Star Wars lore, from what I've gathered from people I follow online who have a lot invested into the Star Wars lore. I know this series does have some inconsistencies, at least I think it does, but I should also say that with Star Wars, for me, that's never really an issue. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love the Star Wars lore. I have a huge collection of Star Wars figures back there. I've got a lightsaber here. I've got Lego Star Wars around this room. I have so much Star Wars stuff in this room because I love the world of Star Wars. That being said, I must also admit that I'm not deeply invested into the lore and the characters so much. So if there are inconsistencies with the characters, I must admit I don't care too much, because when I'm watching a Star Wars TV show or any new piece of Star Wars content at that, I'm more interested in the way it's directed, in the world building, the new characters we meet. And what I think this show does really well is the world building. The world building. I'm not even sure what I'm saying anymore. So I'm at that point of the day now, I'm just really tired. But yeah, one thing I really love in this show is the world building and how it expands the galaxy, something which I don't think Obi-Wan did too well, or the Book of Boba Fett did too well, or even Mandalorian Season 1 and 2 did that well. This show expands the galaxy. We don't go back to Tatooine. Thank God. The amount of times we've gone back to Tatooine in the past couple of Star Wars TV shows, it's slightly ridiculous. But anyway, going back on what I was saying, I love how it expands the galaxy and we see all these new creatures and these new characters. There are now zombie stormtroopers, which I find really cool, They just make my 8-year-old self smile. And you have these turtle-like hermit crab creatures that you see Ezra around. I love them. I didn't know if I'd love them when they first introduced, but then they reminded me of the Ewoks, and I love the Ewoks, so I began to love those characters so much more. And yeah, I love the world building in this series. And one other thing I really, really loved was the musical score by Kevin Kiner. Now, he did all the music for the Clone Wars, as far as I'm aware, and I remember liking the music for the Clone Wars movie, although thinking it was a bit over the top. And I haven't really listened to Kevin Kiner's Star Wars score so far. Now, that all being said, again, I think his scores for Ahsoka are tremendous. This might be, his scores for Ahsoka, his musical scores and his themes for this series might be the best themes composed for a Star Wars TV show yet. I like the music quite a lot for Andor. I like the music quite a lot for Obi-Wan and Mandalorian and Boba Fett and whatnot. But the thing is, they haven't always felt like Star Wars to me. And that's what I actually quite liked about those scores, the fact that they were different. But when I'm listening to Kevin Kiner's scores for Ahsoka, it's got some of that John Williams classic Star Wars themes in there. It's got some of those classic John Williams Star Wars themes in there, and yet it also feels original and it feels new. It feels familiar but different, and in the way you want a Star Wars score to feel like. And I really loved Kevin Kiner's score for this show. Kevin Kiner's scores for all 8 episodes of this season. The way he blends those old, memorable John Williams themes that we all know and love, and the way he adds his own new themes in there for this Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau era Star Wars just works so well. And yeah, he was one of the reasons that this show felt like an extension of the Star Wars prequels, because it had some of those John Williams themes in there, something which the scores from Mandalorian and Boba Fett and Obi-Wan never really did. I mean, Obi-Wan did a bit, but the score was a bit disappointing in that show. But the main theme for Obi-Wan was great by John Williams. He did a great job composing the main theme for that show, and I loved the score for this series. And, I just really enjoyed watching it. I know I've said it before, but I'm so happy that I did. Some shows can just be enjoyable. Not every show has to be deep and philosophical and really get to the heart of this really troubling issue. Don't get me wrong, I love shows like Succession, House of the Dragon, morning shows, and one of those which I'm watching right now, where the writing is very good and it's meant to be a very serious and captivating drama. I love shows like that. But also, sometimes you just want to sit in front of the TV and watch something that's fun. And watch something that isn't going to make you think too much. And it's just going to take your mind off the day you are having. And that's what Ahsoka did for me. I can appreciate that it's got a lot of problems. I can sit here and go, yeah, there are a lot of big issues with Ahsoka. And the last episode, although I enjoyed it, did feel like a bit like a cartoon come to life. And I do think that the show has that issue a bit, where it feels like it's migrating from animation to live action. Not always for the best. Sometimes for the best, and sometimes not for the best, so for some bad reasons. There's some parts of the show where it's like, really, I think that would have worked better in animation. I think, yeah, I can understand why I thought that might work in animation, not so much here. And it has its issues. And if you want to hear somebody talk about all the issues of Ahsoka, go and watch one of those incels online who do nothing but talk rubbish about these Star Wars Disney Plus shows, who have no other life than to just talk about how Star Wars is dead. Just go and watch one of them if you want to hear somebody complain about Ahsoka, because that's not what I'm not going to do, and that's not what I have done this podcast. I enjoy this series, and I know I've said that quite a few times, but I'm just happy that I did, because I genuinely thought this would be the first Star Wars Disney Plus show that I wouldn't enjoy, and yet I did. And another thing which I really liked was how this show had similarities to the first Lord of the Rings film, The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring, which I saw in the cinema, the extended version, of course, which I saw in the cinema a couple of days ago now. What an experience seeing that in the cinema. This show has similarity to that, even to the point that there's one very big visual similarity in the last episode of this series, in the last episode of Ahsoka, and it also has similarities to the other 2 Lord of the Rings films, where we literally see at one point Ahsoka go from Gandalf the Grey to Gandalf the White, which we see Gandalf go through in the second Lord of the Rings film, The Two Towers. And I like all the similarities to Lord of the Rings. I think they're all intentional. I think if we see his characters again, it's going to feel very much like The Two Towers. Maybe not, but I think that's what I feel like. And I also loved the use of characters we already know in this series and cameos. And what I mean by that is the use of Anakin, as I've already talked about. And again, another spoiler here in case you haven't seen all of Ahsoka yet. The C-3PO cameo. Let's talk about Anakin first. I really loved the use of Anakin in this series, as I've already said. The way they bring his character and incorporate his character into the narrative of the show works so well, because I remember from the Clone Wars movie, he is Ahsoka is Anakin's Padawan. So, you're watching that, and you really feel that bond, and there's this great chemistry between Hayden Christensen and Rosario Dawson whenever they're on screen together, and the way they incorporate that relationship into the show, I think, works really, really well. And I didn't think any of the Hayden Christensen appearances as Anakin Skywalker / his little appearance as Darth Vader in the show, I didn't think any of them were gimmicky. I thought they all made narrative sense. Same with the cameo that C-3PO had. C-3PO, I think, appeared in, I want to say, episode 7 of this series. It was episode 7 or episode 6. And I heard some people complaining, oh, it's just a cameo for the sake of cameos. No, it's not. If Luke Skywalker showed up in the show, maybe. Or if Han Solo showed up in the show, maybe. But the point of C-3PO showing up is to tell us where Leia is. Because we know at this point in the Star Wars timeline that Leia is about. We know that she is a big force in the rebellion, which is soon to be the Resistance. And yet, you can't really have Leia show up in this show without her being CGI. I just don't think it would work, and quite honestly, I think it'd be disrespectful. I just, yeah. Because Carrie Fisher has sadly passed away. Now, if Carrie Fisher was still alive, maybe, but Carrie Fisher has sadly passed away. So, you know, I think it would leave a bad taste in people's mouths. So what they do instead is tell us where Leia is by C-3PO, which works perfectly. I don't care what anybody says. That is a perfect example of how you do a Star Wars cameo. It works well. It tells us where Leia is at this point in the timeline, the Star Wars timeline, and it gives her a part in the series without actually having to be on screen. And I loved that cameo with C-3PO. It made me smile from ear to ear, as so much this show did, because it reminded me of the Star Wars prequels. And I know I can understand why that might infuriate people, because the Star Wars prequels, if you didn't know already, were not met with a great response when they came out, but I grew up watching those films, which is why I liked them, because, you know, when you watch them, they're films aimed at kids. That's what they are. They're films aimed at kids. I mean, George Lucas even said that, I think. And so, when I watched them, they made me feel like a kid. And Ahsoka made me feel like a kid again. You know, and I can understand why that might be a criticism for some people, but for me, it just gave me something to look forward to every Wednesday morning. I really enjoyed this show. I really did. And yeah, I'm so happy that I did, because I was hesitant about watching it. As I already said, I was hesitant about watching it. But yeah, it's another really good Star Wars Disney Plus show in my opinion. Not quite as good as Andor. In fact, no, Andor's on another league compared to this. But it's not quite as good. This season isn't quite as good as Mandalorian Season 2 to me. For me, that season is still the pinnacle of the Favreau and Filoni era of Star Wars that we are currently in, with Boba Fett, Mandalorian, this show, and soon to be Skeleton Crew. That all being said, I think it's better than Mandalorian Season 3. I think it's better than Mandalorian Season 1. I think it's better than Boba Fett, and I think it's better than Obi-Wan, which is something I never expected to say. If you told me I'd like Ahsoka more than Obi-Wan, wow. And I enjoyed Obi-Wan, but yeah, Ahsoka's better. Anyway, I enjoyed this show, and so for that reason, I'm going to say, you know what? I don't care. I'm feeling generous, and I want to be positive about Star Wars. When there's so much negativity about it online, I'm going to be positive about it. I'm going to give Ahsoka an 8 out of 10. Usually I give shows an 8 out of 10. I give shows that I love an 8 out of 10. And I don't love Ahsoka. I might do a rewatch, but as of now, I don't love Ahsoka. But it made me... I really liked it. I really liked it, though. And I'm giving it an 8 out of 10 because it feels like Star Wars. And it reminded me that Star Wars can be really fun to watch and also good TV. Something which Mandalorian Season 3 didn't, and I wish it did. And there was some really good parts to Mandalorian Season 3. I'm not saying that series was bad, but it wasn't what I was hoping it would be. Yet Ahsoka, it exceeded my expectations. And again, this is all coming from somebody who never saw Star Wars Rebels. I don't know these characters, at least I didn't know these characters before watching this show. And now, I'm looking forward to them all coming back. Whenever they appear again, whether it's in Skeleton Crew, which is coming out, I think, late this year, early next year, and is meant to be taking place around the same time, or whether it's in Mandalorian Season 4 or Ahsoka Season 2. And by the way, I hope there is a Season 2, I would love there to be season 2. I don't know if there will be. There is some. It sounds like there is some, hesitancy online whether there will actually be another season of the show. But I'm hoping there will. I'm hoping there will be another season of Ahsoka because I want to see these characters back. I like them all. I know some people like Ponce Sabine. I really like that character. Same with Hera. Same with Ahsoka. And same with Ezra. I really enjoyed watching all these characters. I thought all the cameos worked really well. I thought that the world building was great. I loved the new addition of, well, it's not a new addition, but I love the addition of Thrawn now as his villain. I loved Balin and Shin and the late Great Way Stevenson is so good in the show. Kevin Kiner's score for this series is fantastic. The best musical score for a Star Wars Disney Plus show we've had yet. And I looked forward to watching this show every Wednesday morning because it reminded me of watching Star Wars when I was a kid. It reminded me of the Star Wars prequels. And I mean that in the best way. Because even so those films aren't great, I've always liked them. And so, yeah, that's why I enjoyed Ahsoka. Because it was just fun and exciting. And at times, even a little bit emotional TV. To stick on Disney Plus on a Wednesday morning and take my mind off whatever I was thinking at that time. And so, yes, I enjoyed Ahsoka. I'm so happy that I did. And so, as what he said, I'm going to say that Ahsoka, I'm going to say that it's an 8 out of 10 from me. Anyway, guys, that's it for the podcast for today. If you have seen Ahsoka, then let me know your thoughts on it in the comment section below. Maybe you hated this series, and that's completely fine if you did, but also be respectful, The Star Wars fan base can be toxic, and I don't want any toxic fans commenting on my podcast today saying, your opinion's wrong, blah, 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 blah. Ahsoka is awful, and it ruined Star Wars. If you didn't like Ahsoka, that's fine, but also be respectful that other people did. And if you did like Ahsoka, let me know why in the comment section below as well, because I'd love to hear your thoughts on what made it click with you and this show. Anyway, guys, that's it for the podcast. I've already said. So thank you, as always, for watching or listening to this podcast. And if you haven't yet, please do click down below and subscribe on this podcast. And look forward to many more podcasts coming very soon on this channel. As I said, thank you as always for watching or listening to this podcast. And I will see you guys again soon. But bye for now. Bye. In fact, bye for now. Bye.